So I would believe Jade's version and probably not mine so much, but that's just because I tend to be factually incorrect most of the time. So I want to do a couple of things. I think I want to talk a little bit about how Gangplank came to be, how it's kind of changed over the last, I hate to say it, 6 years now, 7 years, and a little bit of, I think, where it's going or some of the impact that we're seeing. So originally, I was doing a lot of work in San Francisco, and in fact, I was working for a company in Mountain View. I would fly out on Tuesday mornings, and I hate to say it, but my commute from Gilbert to San Francisco was about the same as it was to downtown Phoenix at the time. And I would work 3 days in Mountain View, and I'd fly back home on Thursday night and come back home. And I absolutely loved everything about San Francisco from a people perspective. Everywhere I went, people were talking and having conversations that just emotionally got me super excited. I'm a pretty passionate person. It doesn't take a lot to get me started, but it seemed like everywhere I was at, there was great conversation happening about a really diverse set of topics. Right? Everything from philosophy to software to you name it, was really happening. And so when I would come back here, I was pretty full up, so it didn't really bother me that there were not the conversations happening, there weren't the connections happening. And when I left that position, I started a company with Jade, who it sounds like you heard his story last week or a couple weeks ago. And when we started our company, we ended up kind of taking on some local clients to get bootstrapped. And once we were up and going, we really jumped into a market that was just starting out and had no clients here in the Phoenix area. And so what we found ourselves in, 3 or 4 months being is a company that had, over $1 million of revenue with no customers locally, hiring a ton of people. We hired 15 people in 3 months, and in part of that curve, almost none of those people came from Phoenix because nobody in Phoenix had the skill set that we were looking for. I mean, we tapped out the Phoenix market for Ruby developers 7 years ago in about 2 days because it was pretty much, if you were not part of the Ruby on Rails core team, you probably weren't doing Ruby development. And as part of that ramp up, we had to ask ourselves, why the hell are we in Arizona? None of our customers are here. None of our current employees are from here. And furthermore, we have no prospective customers or employees on the horizon here. So it's costing us a metric truckload to basically onboard employees. It's very difficult for us to deal with our customer base. We're losing all sorts of opportunity. So why are we here? And furthermore, the conversations here absolutely suck. And the people that we're interacting with are, for lack of better terms, spiritually dead when it comes to conversation, right? They are wanting to talk about stuff that just doesn't really matter, right? I'd almost call it simpletons, right? So what do? Do we move? I mean, there's only 15 of us at this point. It's a hell of a lot easier to move now than if we're 45 people. And we really talked about it. Jade's a native. I've been here ever since I was 1, so I've been here for 30 plus years at the time. What are we going to do? And we said, well, it sounds like there's 3 things we can do. We can pick up, we can move. We can bitch and complain, or we can try to do something to make a difference. And at that point, a couple of things were happening at the same time. Josh Strebel at the time was with ObiWeb, which is now kind of morphed into Pagely. You had Ward Andrews from Draw Backwards. You had a number of people, about 25, 30 young entrepreneurs running technology companies. And those entrepreneurs had started to go to lunch once a month, twice a month, maybe it was twice a month at the time, to kind of talk about like, hey, we're in this together, can we support each other? And those lunches were a breath of fresh air in the sense of it was the first time in Phoenix that I really felt I was around people who were thinking about things much bigger than their next paycheck, much bigger than themselves. And as part of that, there was another movement kind of started by Aaron Post and James Archer and Dan Ridensall, a number of folks from 40, called Refresh Phoenix, which I think was undergoing a similar identity crisis in the sense of they were trying to challenge mostly designers, but also some startups in the area to really try to like, hey, can we jumpstart Phoenix? Can we do something about Phoenix and the fact that we don't really like the position that Phoenix is in? And so between kind of Refresh and this group, what we heard were we heard three things loud and clear, and we heard them time and time again from almost every entrepreneur that we ran into. Usually, in one of those meetups, we would hear somebody say the exact same thing we said, which is, I think I'm going to leave Phoenix. I think I'm going to move my company out of Phoenix. We saw 3 or 4 of those companies actually leave Phoenix in a very short period of time. And we saw a number of them spend a month or two in Silicon Valley looking for funding. But the 3 things that they would all come back to, the first one that they came back to almost every time was lack of capital. There's just not enough money to do my idea. I'm spending all my time trying to get money, and it's just not there. The second thing that we heard was there's just not enough talent in Arizona. We just can't do what we want to do with the talent we have. Now, we certainly felt that pretty hard ourselves, seeing how we were having to recruit talent from outside. And then the last one was that we just don't have the chemical makeup or the infrastructure to really launch product in Arizona. And what I mean by this is if you're moderately connected or even slightly connected in Silicon Valley, New York, Chicago, a big metro, and you put a product on the market and you run it through your product channels, you could probably onboard between 5,000 and 10,000 beta users pretty quick. Now, they might all log in one time and tell you your product sucks and you never get them back, or you might be able to jumpstart them further. In Arizona, especially back in the time, I think Chuck Reynolds was probably the most connected person on Twitter at that time, and I think he probably had 1,100 followers. That's 1,100, not 11,000. And being able to get product to market was like pulling teeth. If you could onboard 1,000 friends in Arizona, that was like an act of God, unless you had some, product that was just appealed to absolutely everybody. But if you had anything that was in any kind of specific market space, good luck getting 500 people on it fairly quickly to get any kind of feedback. So, we were kind of thinking about it. We had never had problems with access to capital. We happened to know, be fairly connected in Phoenix. We knew people that had capital. That really wasn't an issue for us. And so what we did is we started to try to broker some deals with some investors, with some startups. And what we found is we found somebody willing to basically broker a $250,000 deal, pretty much sight unseen, without even really meeting the other party, just based on recommendation. So, hey, if you guys say it's a good thing, we'll come to the table and we'll definitely consider it. Like, the entrepreneur ended up not really wanting the deal and decided to go on their own with it, which was a great move for them. But what it told us was, capital is available. So Jade and I said, why don't we do something about it? Why don't we just go ahead and create a startup fund? So we did that. We created a startup fund, very similar to Y Combinator. We said, let's give away between $25,000 and $50,000, bring people in, incubate them. As part of that, at the same time, our company had started to go through some pretty strategic organizational changes, and that we were really trying to do a lot more agile development, kind of XP, extreme programming, and so we really started to have all of our people in a single room. So we had these, 8 or 10 offices around the outside. They were like 10 by 10, 10 by 12, 200 square foot offices, something to that effect, that we just weren't using. Just weren't using them at all. And so we said, well, why don't we invite some people in? So about that time, we were having a conversation, like, who would we invite in, right? We're going to this Refresh Phoenix thing. We're going to this, Phoenix Schools lunch thing. There's some really good people out there. We want to be around smart people. Who should we invite in? About the same time that happened, we said, well, there's that group. There's this group that they kind of have, and I can't even remember their name. I think it was 30-second rule or something at the time. I don't know if James isn't here, so he'd be able to tell me. And it was like James Britt and Dan Rittenshall and Aaron Post, and they were kind of doing the Refresh Phoenix. And I thought, well, it'd be really cool maybe if we invited them in. And like 2 days later, it's like 30 seconds rules, no longer in business, and they've kind of been acquired and merged into 4D Media. And we're like, oh, cool, James. And we're like, oh, now they're too big. They never really want to work, they're too big. They're growing too fast, and they never want to work with us. Like, we got to figure out somebody else who we want to invite in. And that morning, I get an email. I don't know what I don't know if it was from Scrabble or who it was from. And they're like, hey, do you hear? I'm like, no, what? And they're like, 40 got kicked out of their garage. I said, what? He says, yeah, they got kicked out of their garage. I'm like, they work in a garage? Yeah, they're working in a garage in Tempe, and they got a car parked there, and they got this asshole neighbor, and he's like been complaining. They came over, and the city came over and told them, hey, man, you can't have a company in a garage. And they're like, well, we're not like making stuff in here. Like, there's no like chemicals or anything. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, you can't do it. All right, so I thought, okay, well, what are they doing? I don't know. So I sent an email to James. I said, hey, James, I heard you guys got kicked out of your garage. We happen to have some office space. We'd like to invite you in. Are you interested? He said, yeah, we're not sure we're doing yet. We'll give it we'll think about it a little bit. We'll see where it goes. Like, okay, great. So, I'll never forget, I think that they had a couple computers that, like, they just, like, his wife probably said, get those out of the garage since you're not working out here. So I kind of put them in, and they never really came in, right? So it was like, they came in one time for like half an hour, and they were gone for a week. They come back, like, one time. And I think what was kind of happening, and James could tell you, he's here, he could tell you, I think they were a little bit leery, to tell you the truth. Like, oh, this sounds kind of like skeptical. Like, I think we're going to look and see what other options are there. This, like, free thing. Behind the scenes, it was hilarious. Because this was, I think, the first part of the Be Dangerous movement happening without us really knowing it. And that was, we thought, okay, well, how do we do this? We don't really want to charge him anything. Our operations director, who happened to be with one of our investors, said, what the hell are you guys doing? You're going to invite another company? Sure, yeah, we're just going to give them the opposite. They're like, well, I hope the fuck you have a lease agreement with them. We're like, why do we need a lease agreement? They're like, well, need to talk to the lawyer. Okay? So we've got nice, expensive lawyers, $400 or $500 an hour. So we tell them, oh, we just need something that's like this thing that says, like, you don't mess with our shit, we don't mess with your shit, and we all get along. They're like, oh, no, that's not like, you can't do that. You've got to. So they sent us back this like 900-page lease agreement, and then we're like, and they're like, and it can't be free. It's like, well, why can't it be free? Well, because that's not legal and binding. Okay, what would make it legal and binding? Well, it has to be something. Okay, how about $1? So I still have this thread in my mailbox today. There was probably 300 email exchange between legal, myself, Jade, and operations people arguing over whether we could charge $41 to come in. Ultimately, Jade and I said, screw it. The truth is, these assholes are never here. Would they even know if 40 was here anyways? We're just going to handshake with 40 and say, hey, don't fuck with our shit, we won't fuck with your shit, we all get along. That's what we did. So they moved in. Pretty soon, I go out to lunch with Strebel, go down to his nice plush office down at the air park, and he's whining like a stuck pig. Strebel tends to do that sometimes. Oh man, they're gonna up my rent like $400. This is horrible. It's like, well, why don't you move? Oh, like everywhere is expensive. This is before the bomb happened, so rental rates were still going up. And I said, why don't you come out to Gangplank? Because, that's so far. That is so far. Because Strebel lives, like, in East L.A., somewhere out there. Like, wherever, like, you go to the 85, you get another 10 miles past that. Like, I think Strebel's somewhere over there. right? And so he goes, oh, it's too far. And I was like, dude, like, you're already driving like 105 miles. Oh, yeah, but anyway, it's like another 100 miles. So I get on MapQuest that night, and then I go or Google Maps. I plot it out. I'm like, dude, it's a 2-mile difference. He's like, oh, you're full of shit. It's like 20 miles different. So I plot the map out, and he's like, I think the map is lying. It's not 2 miles. There's no way it's 2 miles. I was like, dude, you're already at Elliott. You're just coming east instead of north, right? So he says, okay, well, I'll talk to Sally about it. We'll see what we do. A couple days later, I think they're moving crap in. Yeah, we're vacating. Right? About the same time, Ward Andrews with Draw Backwards, running a small consultancy. I think it was him, kind of another guy, another gal, doing some work, working out of his house. And he took on a huge project. The huge project required him to onboard 3 or 4 people. So he pulled me aside and said, hey, I know that Josh and James and them are in there, and I know you guys have been saying that you're looking for maybe some more people. I don't want to be pushy, but I've got a little bit of a situation. My wife doesn't mind me working at home, but she's not really fancying the fact that we might have 3 or 4 strangers tropping in and out of the house every single day. Do you think maybe I could let the contractors that I'm going to hire work out of one of the offices every day, and then I'll just come down there and be down there like 1 day a week? So sure, why not? So they did that, and at this point, all of our offices are full. We've got a diverse set of people. About the same time, we started doing brown bags just internally for our company. We were hiring people that didn't know, that still needed training. I mean, there just weren't. We were having to hire people that were just smart people that didn't necessarily know the technologies we were doing. So we were doing a lot of internal training. During those, 40 would come out a lot, and they would ask questions from a design standpoint. And we're like, this is awesome. And it's like, could you just talk, hey, next week, could you talk about that? No, sure. So that's how Brownbag started. This is basically company sharing. It's like, hey, we all suck at SEO. Josh knows something. Josh, will you come talk about SEO? Hey, we don't understand, the latest CSS techniques. James, could you have Dan come over and talk about that, right? So that's pretty much how Brownbag started. We're just internal companies sharing information with each other, trying to make each other's skill set better, be able to see the world through each other's lenses. About the same time, Intergram was wanting to do some product development, and as part of that, we decided to do it through the equivalent of kind of like FedEx days, only we did it through Hack Nights, where we would basically provide some food, alcohol, whatnot, and our folks would stay a little bit late and hack on various ideas. Well, what happened is the other companies in the space were like, hey, people still here at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. We'll hang out too. Well, then what happened is we started to invite friends, and Hack Night was kind of born. Right? And I remember Hack Night in the first building is, sometimes it would be a rave. There would be no lights on at all except in the offices, and there'd be the kind of going on. And you might have anybody from Pat Sullivan to, local celebrity, you name it, coming through is just like crazy, right? And it reminded me of San Francisco a lot, right? Was people just show up. There's no like event. There's no this. It's just, fuck it. Somebody said like, hey, I'm doing this tonight. Do you want to go with me? And that's how it happened. It's all organic. And I think what it started to do is it started to build community, where what we would see is we would see somebody walk in, and they maybe, hey, I'm going to go visit Josh to get some help on my website. And I come in and I see Ed. I'm like, dude, Ed, I haven't seen you forever, man. What are you doing here? And Ed's like, I'm hanging out. And it's like, well, I'm done with Josh. We should go to lunch. It's like, okay. So then, hey, we go to lunch. We come back. I look at my watch, and it's like 2 o'clock. It's like I got to fight traffic. It's like, hey, do you guys mind if I just hang out at this desk for a couple of hours until traffic dies down? And they're like, well, it's Hack Night tonight. Why don't you stay for Hack Night? Oh, okay. Next thing you know, I'm saying, hey, can I come back tomorrow? That's how hot desks were invented, right? Seriously, that's how hot desks were invented. So a lot of the things you see today were not some master plan, master architected thing. They were response to demands that were emergent, right? And I think that is the power of Gangplank, is it doesn't try to artificially solve problems that don't exist. It tries to provide the infrastructure, the mindset, and the permission to allow people to solve problems that they know exist. And I think that works really, really well. And I think that what started to happen is you really started to see Gangplank kind of become a core or a centerpiece of a physical gathering place for entrepreneurs and creatives, people that were craving something a little bit deeper than what they were getting elsewhere. And I think we did a really, really good job of that. Where I think we made some mistakes is we thought that that's what Gangplank really was we started to say, oh, Gangplank is really about a physical place, because at the time that was the demand. People said, like, I need a place to go to find other people like me, right? And so I think we did that. I think we did it probably for a little bit too long. So originally the plan was, well, we're going to try to build everything around Gangplank, right? So, I mean, we're going to take a mindset of, if you want to participate, you have to show up. If you want to participate, you need to be close by. You need to be engaged. I think that worked until we hit a boom and then a bust. And I think the problem with the bust is it became not okay anymore to say, well, if you were really serious about what you were doing, you would just move closer to where the action's happening. So if you lived in the far West Valley, or you live, down in Tucson, or you live in Payson or whatever, if you're really serious about doing a community, doing something, it's a hell of a lot easier to move to Chandler than it is to move to San Francisco or New York or somewhere where your cost of living is going to be 10 times as much, right? Well, that became not an option for people as much anymore. So we started to play around with the idea of, well, what would it look like if we did Gangplanks somewhere else? So we started to do kind of these like pop-up Gangplanks or these satellite Gangplanks. And what we found is we found some interesting information. And the most important thing we found is that if we provide really awesome content, people will drive hours for it. Literally 2-3 hours for really fabulous content, really fabulous events. However, they will not drive here weekly or every day for normal interaction with other people. So what we found is the radius tended to be about 15 minutes. So not miles, 15 minutes. So if you're freeway to freeway, 15 minutes is about how far somebody in Phoenix will go for something. So if something's 15 minutes away, whether it be by foot, by train, by car, by whatever mode of transportation you use, if it's 15 minutes away, you will go to it every damn day. The minute that it's more than 15 minutes, your chances of coming back drop. So if you go 15 to 30 minutes away, you're probably a once a weeker. If you're more than 30 minutes away, you're probably a once a monther. If you're more than an hour away, you only come when there's some special events. Well, Phoenix is too damn big. So we said, okay, well, if we really want to change Phoenix, we have to be open to the possibility that we've got to create intersections that have overlaps that are greater than 15 minutes, right? And so that's when the concept of Tucson, we brought Tucson online, we brought Avondale online, and we're looking to bring downtown Phoenix online. We've done some experimentation in downtown Phoenix. We think there's enough demand for it. And the idea is that kind of gives, the goal would be to have a Gangplank within 15 to 20 minutes of the majority of population, right? And that those Gangplanks then would be connected to each other work. But I think during that process, we learned a bunch of things. We learned that it's about way more than entrepreneurship. It's about really economic development. So the things that we were playing with and the things that we said, like, this is what attracts us to a place. This is what attracts us to an economy, are the same things that most of millennials are looking for. And so as part of that, we really started to form a new form or a new way of thinking about economic development. Now, we didn't do that in a vacuum. There are other people that have been writing about it, other people that have been experimenting with it. But I think we were one of the first groups that really started to actually interact with it and live it. And I think that the city of Chandler was smart enough to pick up that we were doing something a little bit different and something that was a little bit special. And so we were able to enter into a partnership with them that allowed us to really take things to the next level, allowed us to kind of expand into Tucson, allowed us to expand into Avondale, allowing us to expand outside of Arizona. It also has raised awareness for us that it's as much about culture in the term of arts, right? So you got your music, photography, video, physical, sculpture art, you name it, that is important. It told us that education is monumentally important. If economic development is really all about people, which we believe it is, how do you keep good people from leaving, right? Not like keep them prisoner, but how do you make it so they don't want to leave? How do you make it so they want to stay, right? How do you provide opportunity for the people that are here? And more importantly, how do you cultivate new people, right? So that kindergartner that's in school today, in another 18 years, is going to be the future of the city. So how do we make sure that we're providing the assets and the resources and the modeling and the mentoring and the leadership for them to move into the future? All right? And as part of that, we really got to the point where, okay, I think we can start leading some conversations about economic development. And that's what we've been doing for the past year or two, and I think we've been fairly successful at that. I think we've gotten the attention. I'm still amazed to this day. A lot of times when I go to places, I'll be at a table or be in front of people that, to me, are intimidating, right? You know, whether they be, you know, mayors of cities, whether they be state representatives, whether they be U.S. House representatives or senators, and I'll introduce myself, and then they'll say, "Oh, you're with Gangplank. I've heard of that before." Like, I mean, that still surprises me to this day. I don't know how we get on some of their radars, because I certainly wouldn't see them as fitting in the circles of Gangplank per se. But I think we've done a good job of that. So I think that kind of, it's like, you know, this is kind of where we go, where we came from, where we go. As part of that, I think we kind of created this formula that says what works, right? We know that chaos works, right? You have to allow disruption to happen. You have to be friendly to it. You have to be able to be uncomfortable. We know that creativity works, that we were all born to be creators, and we have to embrace that, and when we do, good things happen. We know that, right? We know that creativity alone isn't really powerful if you don't share it with other people. So we understand that collaboration is paramount to success, right? Collaboration is absolutely kind of the grease for serendipity. So when you look at somebody and go, "Oh, well, they just got their thing because they were lucky," no, they learned how to collaborate. That's how they built their own luck. Okay, we've come to understand that. We understand that if you don't figure out a way to propel humanity or a checkbook forward, you're probably not really innovating, right? So collaboration, creativity, and chaos by themselves are not good enough. You have to be wielding it for something productive, right? And we understand that you have to have fun doing it, that our mind is fundamentally different when it's at a state of play than when it's in a state of drudgery. And so the best innovation comes from people in a state of play. We've also learned that it takes a fair amount of excellence. If you don't set the bar high enough, you will never achieve the greatness that you are looking for. And why do we care about greatness? Because abundant greatness is magnificence. Magnificence is what moves humanity forward. So if we want to move humanity forward, we've got to partake in abundant greatness. Well, if we want abundant greatness, that means we have to achieve greatness just within the work that we do. So excellence is kind of setting that bar for greatness. And so we've learned those things. And I think those are really powerful, and I think we've got a lot of work to still do on it. But what really excites me about kind of where Gangplank is going and some of the things we're playing with is, you know, we've now got a pretty healthy petri dish of a wide variety of people with a wide variety of backgrounds, connected in a number of places. And what I'm seeing that is super exciting is, so what I do in my day job, the work that I do is, for lack of better terms, would be a management or organizational coach and or consultant. And as part of that, I see organizations dying. Okay? I see educational institutions dying. I see financial institutions dying. I see government institutions dying. And I see the typical Fortune 500 companies structure deteriorating. Okay? And I see this every day because I get paid money to come in and help fix some of these problems. Well, I'm lucky enough that I've got this petri dish that I can look back on in Gangplank and say, hey, I know it's working when you let people be human and when you allow emergence and serendipity to rule the world and what's really possible. I'm able to take that into organizations. But what really excites me is something that Gangplank has played with that we don't ever talk about. We don't talk about it enough. And that is that we are challenging the most status quo of status quos. And that is we are challenging the concept of monetary capital as being a driving force for purchasing and exchanging goods and services. So when you partake in Gangplank, you don't write a check to anybody. When you sit down, you enjoy power, you enjoy internet, you enjoy relationships, you enjoy a whole hell of a lot that normally you would expect to pay money for. And you don't. And ultimately, you were provided an opportunity to exchange with something much more powerful. And that is your time and your talent. Right now, we're doing that exchange without any formal bookkeeping. And nobody says, hey, you've used a desk for 20 hours. What talent and time have you given back at the exchange rate of X to pay for that desk? Okay. Why is that? Because we were wired to exchange in non-monetary capital ways. We don't need a ledger system. I call it the no douchebag or the asshole ledger system. Your body does the accounting for you. You know who leeches off you and you know who doesn't. Right? The neighbor or the friend who wants to borrow all your shit and never does anything for you, what do you do when you see them coming? I'm going to get away, right? Or you make up some excuse to not lend them the tool or the whatever because you know that it's not a profitable exchange for you. Did you have to go back to a ledger system to prove that? No, your body's wired to be able to do accounting of the humankind intrinsically. And so I think what we're doing is we're starting to press the boundaries of how far can you take social and human capital interactions in exchange for goods and services. Now, I don't think that we will totally replace monetary capital as an exchange form. But I do think that you're going to see the dilution of monetary capital happen significantly in our lifetime. If you don't believe me, look at a lot of the HR data coming out. You see millennials who are choosing lower paid jobs for more control of their time. You're seeing millennials say, I would rather work for a company that pays me less money and allows me to be more involved in humanitarian efforts. I'll take a job that pays me less money but allows me to travel when I want to travel. I'll take less money to be more in charge of where I'm capable and who I'm working with. I'll take less money for a job that has me more involved in the creation of the thing you're paying me to do than just doing rote work. Okay, the organizations that contact me, one of the reasons is they can't get their workforce motivated. They can't get them engaged anymore because they want to put them in a cube. They want to pay them more money. And they can't understand why they can't hire a new skill set. Hey, we need a WebMonkey 3.5 whatever skill set of some technology that came out yesterday, and we can't hire anybody. Why? Because the only person who wants to work for you is 50 years old, 45 years old, and myself that doesn't even know how the technology works. You can't get the 18-year-old that invented the technology to work for you because they don't want to. Because all you're offering is monetary capital. You're not offering any social capital. You're not offering any human capital to that. So I think that this is something that Gangplank should be working on in the next few years, is how do we teach the world how to get back to its roots in trading in capital forms that are non-capital form methods. How do we do that? Because we're doing it here every single day. Most of you probably are totally oblivious to it, but that's the brilliant part. You're doing it right now today by being here, and you might not even be aware of it. And I think that that's the beauty of it. It can be that transparent. Right? We talk about the Jetsons world where what we want it to do is be able to pull out a badge and swipe it and it pays for it. Why? I don't want to live in that world. I want to live in a world where what I do matters to people. What I do is valued, and the people I interact with, I value back. I think most humans want that. We get more and more connected every single day to more and more people, and we get more and more disconnected every day as well. We have lost the art of engagement with other human beings. The beautiful thing is social capital forces it. You can't exchange social capital without engagement of other human beings. That's why I think it's going to be a prime commodity. The other thing is, the biggest anchor to social capital is time. And we're all given the exact same allotment every single day, 24 hours. No matter who the hell you are, you got the same 24 hours as somebody else. Man, you know, you want an even system? That's a pretty damn even system to me. Got to spend it how you can get the most out of it. Any questions? I don't know how I'm doing on time. All right. Any questions?
I've run into people who say Gangplank has been around for a few years. How come you're not on a 30,000 square foot campus with 200 people working on projects or whatever? Blah, blah, blah.
Perfect.
How come you're not big?
Yes, so perfect. We're only as big as we need to be. The other thing is, I'd say that they've not been to Gangplank. We've currently got 6,000 square feet in this building. We've got 6,000 square feet next door, and we're looking to pull in 6,000 square feet next door under construction. That's 18,000 square feet. I don't know the exact numbers. Katie probably would know them, but we've got almost 100 people that work out of here on a daily basis. And if you look at the number of people that come through in and out, you're probably looking at almost 200 people a day in and out of the facility. So the numbers you're talking about, we're almost at those right now. Right? And that's just this location. That's not talking about, you know, Avondale's 5,000 square feet. You got 5,000 square feet in Tucson. That said, I think it's a poor measurement. Like I think one of the things that Gangplank struggles with, I shouldn't say Gangplank struggles with, people struggle relating to Gangplank because when you start to push the boundaries of the status quo, people want to use old school metrics to measure new things. So you can't ever change something by using an old metric. Right? And so as part of that, people want to measure square footage, right, is a success. Number of employees would be another thing. You know, salary would be another thing, right? But in economic development, yeah, these are all great. Or job creations, right? The problem is these are all fairly shallow tactics. I can go build a Walmart down the street. I really don't have anything against Walmart. We call it, you know, Sears Foo or whatever, right? And I can build a 800,000 square foot retail center, and I can employ, I don't know, 300 people at it and pay them all $10 an hour. And economic development wise, that looks pretty damn good. I mean, I created 300 jobs, I took care of everything, but from a grand scale of things, it is shallow, it's fallow, it's nothing is going to grow there. I mean, in another 10 years, it's going to be out of business when their model's out of business. When they turn into the next Kmart or the next whatever, and they're out of business. Now we got a big-ass empty box store that doesn't mean shit for anybody. The people that are there, you know, are not making enough money to actually exist, so they're having to be subsidized, right? So, I mean, I think part of what we're trying to do is challenge the status quo. And I'll be honest, I don't know what the right metrics are, right? I mean, you know, is it a number of companies created? Is it a number of people satisfied with where they're living and what they're doing? Right? I'm not sure what the right metric is, but I think that's one of the challenging things is people are looking to the wrong metrics to measure success.
So, Derek, one of the big questions when people walk in, one of the question marks in my mind still is, what is the relationship like with the municipalities that Gangplank deals with? And, you know, would you talk about that a little bit? And then would you talk about what's the biggest opportunity in that relationship?
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
And what is the biggest challenge?
Yeah. So it works a little bit different everywhere we're at. So there's a few different models. So when Gangplank first started, we started with a model of basically philanthropy or of corporate funding, right? So our company basically funded the original Gangplank space and all of the operations of Gangplank because we saw it as mutually beneficial to us. Right? Being a beacon of innovation and creativity would potentially allow us to gain local customers and potentially hire new employees. Right? So it wasn't completely altruistic in the sense of we had something to potentially gain from it, though there was no guarantee. The way we looked at it is we could spend $5,000 a month on a recruiter or on a billboard or on advertising, or we could spend the same $5,000 on extra space and doing events and whatever, and we would probably get a similar return out of it. So that's kind of how it works in Bookman's in Tucson. So that's a corporate sponsor. They have extra space. They say, we're not doing anything with this space. We'll pay the electricity and the internet on it. We'll let you use it. When it comes to a point where we need we need to grow into that space, we'll have a conversation about what happens, right? So that's one way to do it. Our relationship with the city of Chandler is basically a services contract. So what we've got is we've got a bullet list of these 20 or 30 things that we provide them, right? And we're contractually obligated to provide them in exchange for money. Okay. What we do is Gangplank pretty much brokers that contract through social capital. So we say, okay, here's this punch list of all the stuff we have to do. We're going to give all this space, all of this stuff away at no capital cost. But what we're going to do is, hey, if you're participating in this space, we need help to fulfill this contract. Right? So again, you see this happen every single day, and people don't even know they're doing it. You attending this Brownbag is part of the contract. So you don't know that. Right? You do now. There's no big secret. But I mean, that's part of our contract, right? Is to provide Brownbags with information, to provide hack night, to provide annual economic development events, to do education forums, to do training, to do all these things. So you see these things happen. Well, they're not sponsored by the city from a standpoint of, it's not City of Chandler, Workforce Development, City of Chandler, Small Business Enterprise, whatever. What they've done is they've said, you've proven that you guys have done a really good job of this. We'd like to pay you to do it. You do it however you see fit. In the city of Avondale is a model that we really like. It's one we tried to do here in Chandler. It just didn't work because they didn't have the right assets to do it. But what cities are really fabulous at doing is doing capital building. Okay, cities are wired to be capital infrastructure builders. That's what cities were originally created for, to build roads, to build schools, to build infrastructure. They're damn good at it. What they suck at is dealing with people. And what I mean by that is it's very difficult for them to fiscally plan for human beings. Okay? Because they are monitored at a much different level than a normal organization would be done. So if I go out and I create a library as a city, that's easy peasy pie for me. I'm good at it, right? I've got bonds, I've got the ability to take money on loan, or I've saved money, and I know it's going to cost me exactly this, and once I pay for that, it's done. We can say, here's the maintenance cost. For the next 15 years, it's going to cost me this. I can annualize it. Boom. Good to go. Everything's fixed in that. I'm really good with this fixed budget. Okay. Now, where the problem comes in is I go and I hire librarians. And I hire 10, 15, 20 librarians, whatever the number is, right? And I start doing all these programs, and I start doing all this stuff. And everybody's happy and is joyous. And then the economy starts to slide. And I got to cut my budget. If I cut Little Junior's reading program, I am Satan. Okay? Never mind, I don't have the money. I can't cut it because I'm going to have constituents say, well, how dare you cut Little Johnny's reading programs? Okay? If I decide to let go of a police officer, the police union is going to come after me. How dare you not care about the safety of citizens that you would let go of a police officer? Okay? So that's why I say that cities really suck at dealing with employees or humans. It's not that they're not people. It's that they are perceived. Once you create a service, it's very hard to take that service away without there being an emotional response, right? And so what Gangplank has done a fairly good job of is we like to be in poorer areas that need to be reconstructed because that's where creatives thrive. They love old buildings. They love stuff that's raw. They love stuff that's full of potential. They don't want to go be in the newest strip mall where everything is shiny and marble and great. They want stuff where that there's raw and grit, right? So there's a lot of municipalities that have really fabulous buildings that need some work. They can't put their own people in them because their own people go, I'm not going to work in that old crappy building. Like, it's got asbestos problems, and even if you asbestos clean it, I don't want to be around it. Whatever the case is, right? But they've got the capital part to have it. So what we do is we provide them an alternative to say, like, look, this is really easy. You've already got the capital side down. You've got it done. You know how to do that. You know how to finance that. Bring Gangplank in. Allow Gangplank to basically broker all the programs and services. We don't hire staff, right? We don't have a full staff of people at all of our locations, right? So basically allow the community to build their own programming, and if there's a demand for it, the community will step up and fill the demand. If there's not a demand for it, nobody's going to care the Little Johnny's reading program's gone because there weren't any people showing up to the Little Johnny's reading program. Right? And so it provides a new model for doing basically community service or community development. So that's a little bit about how the relationship works. The things that we could leverage, and I cannot say this enough, is Arizona is young. Okay? This state's 100 years old, but in reality, people didn't start really moving here until the last 40, 50 years. Okay? Which means that when it comes to political structure, when it comes to power structure, when it comes to, we don't have old families that have been here for 200 years that are entrenched in every institution, and it's impossible to move them. One of the reasons our legislature is a joke is because we have no consistency there. We've got no leadership there. It's pretty much, whoever throws their sign in the ground and bitches loudest, if you do it enough times, you will get elected here. If you go, it might take you 3 or 4 times, but eventually you'll get the name recognition to go. Right? Or if you've just got enough money. That's usually what it boils down to. Especially in the East Valley, you've got a lot of, you don't have a whole lot of Democrats, obviously. It's mostly Republicans. So you usually have, 3, 4, whatever, going head to head. It's really about whoever can pull the most money for name recognition. Right? And so I think that, to me, that's opportunity. Right? I think that we are still a state that is pretty heavily city-oriented, meaning even though the state does a lot of legislation, there is still an enormous amount of control over what happens in your daily life and in the economics of your city in your city. Okay? And so one of the things we've done with the city of Chandler is we pretty much have somebody on almost every single board or commission. Right? Whether it be the downtown redevelopment, whether it be economic development, whether it be parks and rec, whether it be library, we've got somebody on those boards and commissions basically representing a voice for Gangplank and the people that are within Gangplank. Well, what that does is that creates relationships and structure back so that we can take that and the people that are interacting now are setting themselves up if they want to run for council. If they want to run for something, they actually have an active voice and an engaged voice. So I think that is an opportunity that we currently have that we are leveraging but not leveraging enough. I think what you see is when we put people on boards and commissions, the boards and commissions are really happy. They're like, oh my God, you sent us somebody who's like totally engaged and cares and is like really stepping up. They're like one of the best board members we've ever had, right? So I think that potential is there. We're not utilizing enough. I think one of the dangers is we tend to potentially lose our voice. I know that, at least for me personally, there are times where I mute myself more than I normally would because I don't want to damage a relationship. So it's, you have to start to play that fine line of, do you criticize, and if you criticize, or do you use a harsher voice as you do with somebody who's a partner, somebody that you wouldn't be as a partner? And I think that some of that is okay as long as the conversation is happening. So like for me, I had to learn early on is one of the benefits, okay? Well, when you don't have a relationship with a city, what do you do, right? If you don't have a relationship with a company or a city or whoever you want, what do? You scream, right? So, if you've probably all been this if you travel at all, right? Your airline screws you over. What do? You get on Twitter, your Facebook, and you're like, you're a bunch of fucking retarded, I hate your fucking guts, fucking give me money. I mean, you start to go nuts, right? Because it's the only voice you have, right? And you hope that you're vile enough and pissed off enough that you get enough people vile and pissed off enough that somebody picks up the phone and says, like, why the hell do you hate my guts? Like, what do we need to do to shut you up, right? Well, that's a really great strategy if you don't have a voice. But if you have a voice, it's silly to do that. And so I think we had to learn that, like, we're stupid. We can call the mayor directly. Like, why would we say, like, we're really pissed off about, the street. There's, like, a bunch of accidents happening. You guys are a bunch of idiots. Why would we do that when we can call the street engineer and the city planner and the mayor and say, like, hey, we've got a real problem here. Can we all sit down together and come up with a solution? Right? Like, how do we start to change those conversations, right? So that's a challenge that I think we can turn into a benefit if we look at it the right way. And so kind of going forward, we're pretty much everywhere we do a Gangplank, we're not doing Gangplanks if we don't have municipal partners. Because we believe the only way we can truly be effective and truly get people engaged is to engage in the local physical place. And the only way that's going to happen is if they've got a say in the way that they are governed. Any other questions?
What's next for Gangplank?
I think that for me, And I mean, I think this is a beauty thing. Gangplank, I can honestly tell you, I don't know, because Gangplank's everybody in this room, so I don't know, where the next emergent idea is going to come out. If I were to try to predict the future, two things that I think that are gaining a fair amount of traction and really kind of swimming in my head are, one is I think we've got to figure out how to get Arizona rowing in the right direction on everything from legislation to who we are as a city and a state. And we've got to start saying what kicks ass about Arizona. I'm probably the harshest critic of the people of Arizona, but the truth is, from a physical perspective and the opportunity really available here, it's fucking unmatched. I've traveled the world. This is like one of the most beautiful states in the entire world. You can go from, 3 miles in any direction and have a totally different ecosystem. Right? We don't talk about that nearly enough. We're bitching that we can't get funding. We're never going to attract other good people here or people with money here by bitching about what sucks here. We have to say what's good and not lie about it. I think that's one of the problems Arizona's had is we try to lie about shit. So instead of saying, we got this really great thing and you should love it, we go well, we wish we had this really great thing, so we're going to lie and say we really have it. And then when people get here, they go what planet are you from? That doesn't exist here. Right? So I think that we have to start figuring out how to have a cohesive message about what's right, and I think we have to be united in fixing what's wrong. I think one of the problems is everybody here is an independent cowboy that wants to do it themselves and have all the glory of doing it. We've got to figure that out and get that going the right way. And then I think the other thing that I think that we could absolutely, positively change the world with is education. The reason I say that is this state pretty much invented charter schools from a standpoint of being able to totally do shit that you wouldn't think you could do in education. I'm not advocating charter schools or saying that's the answer. What I'm saying is our legislature is so fucked up that you can slide anything through. Okay? And because of that, I think we need to take that to our advantage, right? We've got the ability to probably innovate in education more than anybody else. We've got ASU's a prime institution of teacher education. NAU is. We've got more digital learning companies in Arizona. Everybody from Pearson to Blackboard to Parchment to RSmart. There's probably 10 or 15 $10 million plus market cap digital learning companies here. We've got the ability to really transform. We've got poor numbers and poor numbers and virtually little to no funding. And so if we can figure out how to be better performers on the same amount of money and using innovation instead, I think we set the world on fire for education. And I think that that's a very doable thing here. I think that we've got a wealth of resources to do that. We're just too stupid to get out of our own way. And so I think if we can do that, we can do some awesome stuff. And I think that Gangplank is actively trying to work on getting the right people together to start to see that and start to make movement in that.
Looking back at the growth and evolution of Gangplank, any particular surprises or things that worked out differently than you thought, or
everything.
Any magic moments that you go, wow, that was really cool, and it happened because of Gangplank?
Yeah, so the question is, any surprises, anything different that kind of happened with Gangplank than expected? And I'd say virtually everything, man. On a daily basis, I am just absolutely amazed. I think to me one of the funny things is we talked a lot about kind of music and doing some music initiatives, and at one time we pretty much were using our voice to basically say how horrible secondary education is, or university education is. If you would have told me 3 years ago that myself and Ward Andrews would both be professors at ASU, I would have told you you're fucking crazy. We were saying that they're one of the worst institutions on the planet, right? But I think a lot of that frustration was actually listened to and given a voice, and we were able to actually help be part of the solution instead of part of the complaint. If you were to tell me that Mesa Community College was going to have a class in basically music industry promotion for bands to be able to move forward, and they were going to do it out of Gangplank, I would have said there's no way that would ever be possible. And that's happening, and I don't know, there's probably a poster around it right here, and it's happening today, I guess, the 4th, right? It probably starts today. Yesterday. It started yesterday, right? That kind of stuff, not even fathomable. To me, it still doesn't seem real. So on a daily basis, I think I'm surprised, which is awesome.
there any plans to rekindle kind of the seed fund idea?
So the question is there any plans to rekindle the seed fund idea? The answer is yes, and the answer is no. So I think one of the things that at least Jade and I, Gangplank at this point is a nonprofit. So Gangplank Collective, from that standpoint, will never be in the funding business just because legally as an institution it doesn't make sense for them. Jade and I still have, Gangplank proper, Gangplank LLC, which was the group that funded companies. I think that we feel that has to come from outside of Gangplank. And some of that is, I think that we really want to be more social capital based than monetary capital based. An example of this would be like Sean and Hireling Solved is a great example of this. Ver is a great example of this, of companies that basically launched within Gangplank without any formal incubation and without any formal funding. They just basically, by using social capital, by leveraging relationships, by using the assets that were available, figured out how to kind of do it. And I think that's the model that I think we see as more of the future. But I still think that we want to very much play in that space from a infrastructure perspective. Meaning we've got a ton of mentors, we've got a ton of educational opportunities, we have physical space, we have all the elements to do incubation. What we want to do is partner with multiple seed funds. So we've talked to like 5 or 6 seed funds and said like, hey, what we'll do is we'll basically run the program for you. We'll do all of the work, but we want to be hands off as far as like you pick who you want to fund, you handle that, you deal with all that, and what we'll do is just provide the infrastructure. And we've had 2 or 3 people that I think are interested in exploring that model and what that would look like. And I think if we do it again, that's the model that we'll use. Any other questions? Okay, perfect.